Have you ever been blamed for something that wasn't your fault? What if the person you loved most made you believe you were the problem, only for the truth to destroy everything he built? How did you handle it? What happens when you give everything to someone who sees your love as weakness? My name is Charlotte Brown and this is my story. And I promise you by the end you'll question everything you thought you knew about marriage, family, and karma. My name is Charlotte Brown. I'm 32 years old, I live in a small flat in Longsight, Manchester, and I'm holding a pregnancy test in my hands right now. 2 lines. Positive. After 5 years of marriage, 5 years of begging, 5 years of being told, God's time is the best, I'm finally pregnant. But here's the thing that will shock you. I'm not pregnant by my husband. No wait, let me rephrase that. I am pregnant by my husband. But he doesn't know it yet. Because 6 months ago he left me. He told me he couldn't wait anymore. He told me I was broken. He told me he needed to move on with someone who could give him children. And then he married someone else. Please don't forget to subscribe. A nurse named Caroline Fletcher. 29 years old, blonde, British, everything I wasn't. And guess what happened? She got pregnant immediately. 2 months after their wedding she was carrying his child. The child he swore he desperately wanted. The child he blamed me for 5 years for not giving him. But here's what he doesn't know. Here's what his mother doesn't know. Here's what Caroline doesn't know. It was never me who couldn't have children. It was him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Let me tell you how a woman who thought she was living a blessed life discovered she was actually living a carefully constructed lie. If someone blamed you for something they secretly caused, how would you handle it? How long would you wait for someone who was lying to you every single day? 5 years? 5 months? 5 weeks to say the truth? I waited 5 years. And I'm not sure if I'm the hero of this story or the fool. David Brown and I got married at St. Augustine's Church in Longsight, Manchester, on a rainy September afternoon 5 years ago. The church was packed with family and friends, the choir sang Amazing Grace, and when David lifted my veil and kissed me, I truly believed I was the luckiest woman in the world. He was handsome, successful, and from a good California family. He worked as a facilities manager at the Royal Manchester Hospital, earning decent money, and he seemed to want the same things I wanted. A loving marriage, a family, a life built on faith and respect. That wedding night in our small flat in Longsight, with rose petals on the bed and candles flickering, David took my hand and called me Mrs. Brown for the first time. I remember thinking, this is everything I've ever wanted. That was the last moment I was truly happy. I just didn't know it yet. The first year of marriage was confusing. That's the best word I can use to describe it. On the surface, everything looked perfect. We went to church together every Sunday at Abundant Life Church in Hume. We had dinner with his family once a month. I cooked his favorite meals, fish and chips, and kept our flat spotless. I was the model California wife just like my mother taught me to be. But there were small things. Tiny red flags I ignored because I was too in love to see them clearly. Like how David barely touched me after the first 3 months of marriage. Oh, we had sex occasionally, but it was perfunctory, mechanical. Nothing like the passion I'd imagined marriage would bring. I told myself he was tired from work. Long hours at the hospital, difficult managers, budget cuts. I made excuses. And then there were the conversations about children. It started about 11 months into our marriage. I was folding laundry in our living room when David came home from work, looking stressed and distracted. I'd made his favorite dinner, mac and cheese and that pepper soup he always raved about. "What's for dinner?" he asked, barely looking at me, scrolling through his phone. "Your favorite," I said cheerfully, trying to lift his mood. "Mac and cheese. And I made that pepper soup you love." He grunted an acknowledgement, still focused on his phone. I hesitated, then gathered my courage. "David, I was thinking. We've been married almost a year now. Maybe we should talk about, starting a family?" I watched his jaw tense. He didn't look up from his phone. "We've talked about this, Charlotte. When the time is right." "I know, but," I said, "when the time is right." His voice was sharp, cutting. I fell silent, hurt blooming in my chest. I returned to folding laundry, my hands trembling slightly. David walked out of the room without another word. That was the first time. The first time he shut me down when I mentioned children. I told myself he was just stressed from work. I told myself it would get better. Have you ever made excuses for someone who was hurting you? Convinced yourself their cruelty was actually your misunderstanding? I became an expert at it. By year 2, something fundamental had shifted in our marriage. David barely touched me anymore. We were roommates, not husband and wife. We shared a bed, but we might as well have been sleeping in different countries. And every time I brought up children, he'd either get angry or worse, go completely cold and silent. I prayed every night. I fasted every Wednesday and Friday. I went to church and sobbed during worship, asking God, "What am I doing wrong? Why won't you bless us with a child?" My best friend Blessing could see I was struggling. She's known me since secondary school at Manchester Academy, and she can read me like a book even when I'm trying to hide. We were having lunch at the local restaurant in Piccadilly when she confronted me. "Girl, you look exhausted. When was the last time you slept properly?" she asked, studying my face with concern. "I sleep fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Charlotte, don't lie to me. What's going on with you and David?" My facade cracked slightly. We're going through something. All marriages do, right?" "Going through what?" I looked down at my plate, my voice barely above a whisper. "We've been trying for a baby. For 2 years now. Nothing's happening." Blessing leaned forward. "Have you both been to see a doctor?" "I've been. Everything's fine with me. But David, he refuses to go. He says it's in God's hands." Blessing's expression shifted to something between concern and suspicion. "Charlotte, that doesn't make sense. If you've both been trying for 2 years and nothing's happening, you both need to get checked." "What's he hiding?" "He's not hiding anything," I said more defensively than I intended. He believes God will provide in his own time." Blessing looked at me with such pity in her eyes, but she didn't push further. Looking back now, I realize Blessing saw it before I did. The red flags I was too blind, or too afraid, to see. But when you love someone, you don't want to believe they're capable of deception. You don't want to believe you've been sleeping next to a liar for years. When did you first realize someone you loved was lying to you? Was it a sudden moment of clarity? Or a slow, painful accumulation of doubts that you kept pushing away until you couldn't anymore? If David was the villain of my story, his mother Helen was the orchestrator. She hated me from the moment David brought me home to Birmingham to meet her. I was never good enough. Not educated enough, not light-skinned enough, not submissive enough, not from the right California family. Helen Brown was 62 years old, originally from Sedona, Arizona, and she had moved to Birmingham 30 years ago. She was a churchwoman, always dressed in elaborate Arizona attire, always quoting scripture, but her heart was as cold as ice when it came to me. About 2 years into my marriage, she came to visit us in Manchester. I served her tea, I cooked her favorite foods, I cleaned the flat until it sparkled. Nothing was ever good enough. She sat on our sofa, accepting the tea I'd prepared without a thank you, and looked me up and down with those sharp, judgmental eyes. "Still no grandchildren, I see," she said. I swallowed hard. "Not yet, Mama. But we're praying. Praying is good," she cut me off. "But a woman needs to do more than pray. She needs to give her husband children. That's her duty." David walked in from the bedroom at that moment. "Mom, don't start," he said, but there was no real conviction in his voice. "I'm just saying what needs to be said," Helen continued, her eyes never leaving me. 3 years of marriage, David. 3 years and no children. People are talking. "These things take time, Mama," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. Helen looked me up and down again, her lip curling slightly. "Or perhaps some women are not capable of bearing children. Perhaps my son made a mistake." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt tears prickling my eyes, but I refused to cry in front of her. I refused to give her that satisfaction. "Excuse me," I whispered, standing up and walking out of the room. "And do you want to know what David did? Did he defend me? Did he tell his mother to respect his wife? Did he follow me to make sure I was okay?" "No." He sat down next to his mother and started talking to her in low voices, conspiratorial whispers I could hear through the wall but couldn't make out. That night, after his mother had gone to bed in our spare room, I confronted him. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked quietly as he unbuttoned his shirt. "About what?" "Your mother. The things she said to me." David shrugged casually. "She's old. That's just how she talks. You're too sensitive." "Too sensitive." I stood up, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "David, she basically called me barren. She said you made a mistake marrying me." She didn't mean it like that. Then how did she mean it? David turned to me and I'll never forget the coldness in his eyes when he spoke. Well, Charlotte, can you blame her? 3 years and nothing. Maybe she has a point. I felt like he'd slapped me. How can you say that to me? I'm just being honest. I married you to build a family. Where's my family? Tears were streaming down my face now. I've been trying, David. Every month I hope, I pray, I take the tests, and every month there's nothing. This is breaking my heart and you're acting like it's something I'm doing on purpose. Maybe it is, he said coldly, and then he walked out, leaving me alone and shattered. That night I cried until I couldn't breathe. I cried until my eyes were swollen and my head was pounding. I questioned everything about myself. Was I broken? Was I being punished for something? Why wouldn't God give me a child when I wanted one so desperately? Have you ever been blamed for something that wasn't your fault? Have you ever carried guilt that wasn't yours to carry? It's a special kind of torture. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that while I was home in Manchester crying and praying, David and his mother were plotting. It was about 18 months before David eventually left me. He went to Birmingham to visit his mother, said he'd be back Sunday evening. I stayed home as usual, cleaning and cooking and hoping that maybe this week would be different. Maybe this month would be the month I'd finally see those 2 lines on a pregnancy test. In Helen's terraced house in Handsworth, Birmingham, mother and son sat at the kitchen table drinking tea. Did I only know this now because David's sister Jennifer, who never liked what they did to me, told me everything months later. Jennifer was in the house that day. She heard everything. She's not giving you children, David, his mother said, her voice matter of fact. After all this time it's clear she can't. What am I supposed to do, Mum? David replied, frustrated. Divorce her? The church won't allow it. Helen leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. There are other ways. What do you mean? You're still young. You can have another wife. A younger woman. Someone who can give you the children you deserve. That's not... Listen to me, Helen said firmly. I know a man, Mr. Williams from our church. He was in the same situation. His wife couldn't give him children for 7 years. He took a second wife and now he has 5 children. And his first wife. She's still there cooking and cleaning like nothing happened. She accepted her place. Charlotte would never accept that, David said. Helen smiled coldly. Then don't ask for her acceptance. You're the man. You make the decisions. Find someone. Get her pregnant. And when Charlotte sees there's another woman carrying your child, she'll have no choice but to accept it or leave. Either way, you get what you want. This was the conversation I didn't know about. The moment my marriage was being actively dismantled behind my back. While I was home praying for a miracle, they were planning my destruction. And David. He took his mother's advice. Her name was Caroline Fletcher. 29 years old, staff nurse in the obstetrics department at Royal Manchester Hospital. Blonde hair, blue eyes, from Leeds originally. Pretty in that effortless English way I could never achieve. They worked together. She'd been at the hospital for about 2 years, and according to Jennifer, who got the full story from David much later, Caroline had developed a crush on David almost immediately. He thought he was handsome, charming, professional. She didn't know he was married, not at first. David didn't wear his wedding ring to work. When she finally found out about me, David told her we were separated. He told her I couldn't have children and the marriage was essentially over, he just hadn't made it official yet. He told her he was waiting for the right time to end things with me. All lies, of course. But Caroline believed him. Because why wouldn't she? David was convincing. David was charming. David was a master manipulator. The affair started about 15 months before he left me. And I had no idea. Oh, I suspected something. The late nights at work became more frequent. The phone calls he'd take in another room. The way he'd smile at his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. The sudden interest in cologne and new clothes. One evening I was cooking dinner when David was on the sofa, unusually quiet, checking his phone constantly. It buzzed and he smiled, actually smiled, something I hadn't seen him do in months. Who are you texting? I asked from the kitchen, trying to sound casual. Just a colleague from work, he said quickly, putting the phone away. Must be a funny colleague. You were smiling. David stood up abruptly, his expression shifting to anger. Why are you interrogating me? Can't I use my phone in my own house? I wasn't interrogating you, I need some air. He grabbed his jacket and left, and I stood there in our kitchen surrounded by the dinner I'd made, feeling like I was losing my mind. When did you first sense betrayal? Was it instinct? A gut feeling you couldn't explain? Or did you ignore the signs because you didn't want to believe the person you loved could do that to you? I ignored the signs. God help me, I ignored every single red flag because I couldn't face the truth. Meanwhile, at the hospital, David and Caroline were falling deeper into their affair. They'd meet in the staff cafeteria, have lunch together, take their breaks at the same time. They'd text constantly. And they'd meet up, in hotel rooms in Salford, in her flat in Chorlton when her flatmate was away, in his car in remote car parks. And they were planning a future together. A future that included children. The very thing David kept telling me we couldn't have yet. The beginning of the end came on a cold February evening about 14 months ago. I'd finally convinced David to join me for a church service at Abundant Life Church. We hadn't been together in months, and I thought maybe reconnecting with God together might help our marriage. During the service, Pastor Emmanuel preached about patience and faith. About how God's timing is perfect. About how we need to trust Him even when we don't understand His plan. I was crying, ugly crying, feeling like God was speaking directly to me. Telling me to keep faith, keep praying, keep believing that my breakthrough was coming. After the service, I turned to David with tears streaming down my face. Did you hear that? The pastor said God rewards those who wait faithfully. Our baby is coming, David. I know it is. David looked at me with such contempt, such cold disgust that I actually flinched. Charlotte, stop, he said quietly. Just stop. Stop what? This delusion. This fantasy that God is going to magically give us a child. It's been 4 years. For years. If it was going to happen, it would have happened by now. But the doctor said I'm fine. There's no reason we can't. Maybe the doctor was wrong, David said. Or maybe you're the problem in ways they can't detect. All I know is that I'm tired, Charlotte. I'm tired of hoping. I'm tired of this marriage. I'm tired of you. People were starting to look at us. We were still in the church car park, other congregants walking past us to their cars. You don't mean that, I whispered. I do, he said. I'm done. He walked to our car and got in, leaving me standing there in the cold, my world crumbling around me. That night he slept on the sofa. He barely spoke to me for the next 3 weeks. And then, on a Monday evening in March 14 months ago, David came home and dropped the bomb that would destroy what was left of my life. I was making dinner, pepper soup his favorite, when David walked in. He didn't take off his jacket. He just stood in the doorway of the kitchen, his expression unreadable. I need to tell you something, he said. Something in his tone made my blood run cold. I turned off the stove and turned to face him. What is it? I'm leaving, he said simply. I'm moving out this weekend. For a moment I couldn't process the words. They didn't make sense. What are you talking about? This isn't working, Charlotte. This marriage. It hasn't been working for years. I've tried to be patient, I've tried to wait for God's timing like you're always saying, but I can't do it anymore. I'm 34 years old. I want children. I deserve children. And you can't give them to me. That's not fair, I said, my voice breaking. We don't know that it's me. You've never even been to a doctor to get checked. I don't need to get checked, David said coldly. I know there's nothing wrong with me. It's always been you. How can you say that? How can you possibly know? What would you do if your partner blamed you for something they secretly caused? Because there's someone else, he said, and the world stopped. Someone who's already pregnant. 2 months pregnant. With my child. I couldn't breathe. I literally could not draw breath into my lungs. What? Her name is Caroline. She's a nurse at my hospital. We've been seeing each other for a while. And she's pregnant. So clearly I'm not the problem. You are. Have you ever had your entire reality shattered in a single moment? Had everything you believed to be true revealed as a lie? That's what happened to me in that kitchen. You cheated on me, I whispered. Don't make this about morality, Charlotte. This is about biology. About the fact that you failed in the one job a wife has, to give her husband children. Your one job. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Is that all I am to you? A baby-making machine. That's what marriage is for. That's what the Bible says. Be fruitful and multiply. But you can't do that, can you? You're broken. I'm not broken. I screamed. I went to 3 different doctors. They all said the same thing. There's nothing wrong with me. You're the one who refused to get tested. You're the one who... It doesn't matter now, David said, his voice cold and final. Caroline is pregnant. That's all the proof I need. I'm moving out this weekend. I'll come get my things on Saturday when you're at work. You can't do this, I said, tears streaming down my face. We're married. We made vows. Before God, David. Before God. God helps those who help themselves, David said. I'm helping myself. He turned and walked out. I heard him on the phone in the living room calling his mother, telling her everything. I heard her voice through the wall, harsh and triumphant. I told you, son. I told you she was barren. Now you can have a proper family. I slid down the kitchen wall and sobbed on the floor until I couldn't cry anymore. The next day I called in sick to my job at the council office where I worked as an administrative assistant. I couldn't face people. I couldn't pretend everything was fine. Blessing came over the moment I called her. That bastard, she kept saying, pacing my living room. That absolute bastard. He said I'm broken, I said numbly, sitting on the sofa wrapped in a blanket. He said I failed as a wife. Charlotte, listen to me, Blessing said, kneeling in front of me and taking my hands. You are not broken. You did not fail. He failed. He's the one who cheated. He's the one who violated his vows. He's the one who... But she's pregnant, Blessing. She got pregnant immediately. What if he's right? What if it is me? Then why wouldn't he get tested to be sure? Why wouldn't he try to work with you to solve the problem? I'll tell you why. Because he's a coward and a liar who was looking for an excuse to justify cheating on you. I wanted to believe her. But David's words kept echoing in my head. You're broken. You're broken. You're broken. True to his word, David moved out that Saturday. I went to Blessing's house for the day because I couldn't bear to watch him pack up our life. When I came home that evening, half of our furniture was gone. His clothes, his toiletries, his books. All gone. The flat felt hollow, empty, haunted by the ghost of what I'd thought was a happy marriage. He left our wedding photo on the mantelpiece. I don't know if it was intentional cruelty or just carelessness, but seeing our smiling faces from 5 years ago made me physically ill. I took it down and shoved it in a drawer. The next few weeks were a blur of pain. I went to work, came home, cried, slept, repeated. I stopped going to church because I couldn't bear the pitying looks, the whispered conversations that stopped when I walked in the room. Everyone knew. David's family had made sure everyone knew. And in their version of the story, I was the failure. The barren woman who couldn't fulfill her duty. David's sister Jennifer was the only one from his family who reached out to me. She came to my flat one evening about 3 weeks after David left. I'm so sorry, she said, hugging me tightly. I'm so sorry for what my brother did to you. What my mother did. You knew. I asked, pulling back. Jennifer looked guilty. I suspected something was going on. I saw him with Caroline once when I was visiting him at work. The way they looked at each other. I knew. But I didn't say anything because I didn't have proof and I thought maybe I was imagining it. I'm so sorry, Charlotte. I should have warned you. It wouldn't have mattered, I said dully. He'd already made up his mind. There's something else you should know, Jennifer said hesitantly. About 6 months ago, David went to Birmingham to visit our mum. I was there. I heard them talking. She told me everything. About the conversation in Helen's kitchen. About the plan to get another woman pregnant. About how they deliberately plotted to humiliate and replace me. I felt sick. So this was premeditated. It wasn't just an affair that happened. They planned it. I'm afraid so, Jennifer said quietly. And there's more. David is planning to marry Caroline. Next month. As soon as the baby is born, he wants to make it official. He's still married to me. I said. I know. But he's talking about getting an annulment. Claiming the marriage was never valid because it was never consummated properly or something. I don't know the details. His mum has some lawyer friend who told them how to do it. An annulment. Like our 5 years together never existed. Like I was just an inconvenient mistake to be erased. I thought you should know, Jennifer said. So you can prepare yourself. Get a lawyer if you need to. After she left, I sat in my empty flat and something inside me shifted. I was done crying. I was done being the victim. David wanted to pretend I never existed? Fine. I'd let him. But first I needed to know the truth. The next day I went to see Dr. Russo, our Italian doctor at the Manchester fertility clinic I'd been to 3 times over the years. She'd run every test imaginable on me. Blood work, hormone levels, ultrasounds, everything. Every single time the results came back the same. I was perfectly fertile. There was no medical reason I couldn't conceive. Dr. Rousseau, I said, sitting across from her in her office. I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there any possibility that I'm the one with the fertility problem? Dr. Rousseau looked at my file, then at me with kind eyes. Charlotte, I've told you this 3 times now. Your reproductive system is functioning perfectly. Your eggs are healthy, your hormones are balanced, your uterus is completely normal. If you're not getting pregnant, it's not because of anything wrong with your body. But my husband got another woman pregnant immediately. Dr. Rousseau's expression shifted to something like anger. Did your husband ever come in to get tested? No. He always refused. Then how do you know he got her pregnant? The question stunned me. What do you mean? Charlotte, has it occurred to you that he might not be the father? My mind went blank. But, he said, she's pregnant, and he said it proved it was me who. Listen to me carefully, Dr. Rousseau said, leaning forward. Without genetic testing, there's no way to know for certain who fathered any child. And given that your husband refused to get tested for 5 years, despite you begging him to, I find it highly suspicious that he's suddenly claiming virility. You think he's lying? I think it's possible. But there's another possibility you need to consider. What? Dr. Rousseau hesitated, then said quietly, Charlotte, there's a chance your husband is the one with the fertility problem. A chance he's been infertile this whole time. And if that's true and this woman is pregnant, then someone else is the father. My head was spinning. But why would he lie? Why would he let me think it was my fault for 5 years? Pride, shame, fear. Take your pick. Male infertility is a difficult thing for many men to accept. It challenges their sense of masculinity. Some men would rather blame their wives than face the truth about themselves. I left Dr. Rousseau's office with my mind racing. Could it be true? Could David be infertile? So whose baby was Caroline carrying? I needed more information. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I became a detective. I still had access to David's email. He'd never changed his password, probably because he never thought I'd check. I know it was wrong. I know it was an invasion of privacy. But I needed answers. What I found made me physically ill. David's email revealed everything. Months of correspondence with Caroline. Love letters. Explicit messages. Plans for their future together. But the most damning evidence was an email exchange from 7 months ago, right after Caroline had told David she was pregnant. Caroline's email read, I can't believe we're really going to have a baby. I was so worried after what happened with Jake, but the doctor said this time everything looks good. David's response, who's Jake? Caroline, I told you about him, didn't I? My ex from Leeds? We tried for a baby for about 8 months last year, but it didn't work out. The doctor said it was probably stress. Then we broke up and I moved to Manchester. But look at us now. Obviously it wasn't meant to be with Jake. This baby is our miracle. My heart was pounding as I read further. There were more emails. Emails where Caroline casually mentioned her ex-boyfriend Jake Pemberton, a doctor she'd dated in Leeds. Emails where she talked about how they'd been trying for a baby before their relationship ended. And then about 4 months ago, this email from Caroline to David, I ran into Jake at the medical conference in Leeds last weekend. It was so awkward. He saw my bump and started asking questions. I told him it was yours, of course, but he got really weird about the timing. I had to block his number because he kept calling me. Don't worry about it though, he's just jealous that I moved on and found happiness with you. I sat back, my mind racing. Caroline had been trying to get pregnant with her ex-boyfriend Jake. It hadn't worked. They broke up. She moved to Manchester and started working at the hospital where she met David. They started an affair. She got pregnant. But what if the baby wasn't David's? What if, in the weeks before she left Leeds, she and Jake had one last encounter? What if the timing of the pregnancy wasn't quite what Caroline was claiming? I know it sounds like I was grasping at straws, desperate to believe David wasn't suddenly fertile when he'd apparently been infertile with me for 5 years. But something about all of this didn't add up. I kept digging through the emails. And then I found it. The smoking gun. An email from 8 months ago before Caroline knew she was pregnant. She and David had been arguing because David had confessed he'd never actually gotten tested for fertility issues despite telling Caroline he had. Caroline's email. You lied to me? You said you'd been tested and everything was fine. How do you know you can even get me pregnant if you've never been tested? David's response. I just know, okay? I'm a man. Everything works fine. It's Charles who has the problem, not me. Caroline. David, you need to get tested. We need to know before we plan a whole life together. What if the problem is actually you? David. The problem is not me. I don't need some doctor telling me my sperm count or whatever. I'm fine. We'll prove it when you get pregnant, and then Charlotte will have to accept that she's the defective one. I couldn't believe what I was reading. David had admitted he'd never been tested. He'd admitted his entire justification for blaming me was based on nothing but his own ego and assumptions. And now Caroline was pregnant, and David was taking it as proof of his virility. But what if it wasn't his baby at all? What if Caroline had gotten pregnant by her ex-boyfriend Jake and was either lying to David or genuinely didn't know who the father was? I needed proof. But how could I possibly get it? David married Caroline Fletcher on a Saturday afternoon in May, about 8 months ago. I know because Jennifer sent me a photo, unable to contain her disgust at the whole situation. It was a small ceremony at Manchester Register Office, just immediate family and a few friends. Caroline was 6 months pregnant, wearing a cream-colored maternity dress. David looked happy, triumphant even. His mother Helen was there, beaming like she'd won the lottery. Finally, a grandchild. Finally, a woman who could do what I couldn't. I looked at that photo for hours, feeling emotions I can't even name. Rage, heartbreak, humiliation, but also something else. A growing certainty that this story wasn't over. That karma was coming for David and his new family. A week after the wedding, I got a letter from a lawyer. David was indeed seeking an annulment of our marriage on the grounds that it had irretrievably broken down, and that there had been no issue of the marriage, meaning no children. The legal language was cold and clinical, reducing 5 years of my life to a few paragraphs of bureaucratic jargon. Have you ever been in a relationship where you were made to feel not enough? I didn't fight it. What was the point? David had clearly moved on. And honestly, I didn't want to be legally tied to him anymore either. The annulment was granted in July. Just like that, our marriage was erased. Like it never happened. Caroline gave birth in August. A healthy baby boy they named Joshua. Jennifer sent me a photo from the hospital. David holding his son, looking overwhelmed with joy. Caroline looking exhausted but happy. Helen standing beside them, finally a grandmother. I stared at that photo and felt nothing. I was empty. Hollowed out. Done, or so I thought. It started with a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Is this Charlotte Brown? A man's voice. British accent. Nervous. Yes. Who's this? My name is Jake Pemberton. I'm a doctor in Leeds. I need to talk to you about Caroline Fletcher. My heart started pounding. What about her? I know this is strange and I'm sorry to call you out of the blue, but I've been trying to get answers for months and no one will talk to me. I saw your name in some court documents related to David Brown's annulment. You were his first wife. I was. What do you want? Jake took a deep breath. Caroline is my ex-girlfriend. We dated for about a year, ended things last February. We were trying for a baby. Then she moved to Manchester and within months she was pregnant and married to your ex-husband. But the timing doesn't make sense. What do you mean? Caroline told me she got pregnant in March. But we were together in late February. Right before she moved. We had one last encounter. And now I'm looking at photos of baby Joshua and he looks exactly like my nephew. Same eyes, same nose. I think he might be my son. I felt like I was in a surreal dream. Why are you telling me this? Because I want to get a paternity test, but Caroline won't respond to my messages and David threatened to get a restraining order if I contact them again. I need someone who understands what David is capable of. Someone who won't just believe his lies. Why do you think I can help you? Because from what I've read, David blamed you for 5 years for not getting pregnant. He left you for Caroline, claiming you were infertile. But you went to doctors who said you were fine. Doesn't it strike you as suspicious that he suddenly has a child after refusing to get tested himself for 5 years? It did. God help me, it did. What do you want me to do? I asked. Help me get proof. Help me get a paternity test. If Joshua is my son, I have a right to know. And Caroline has been lying to everyone, including David. I should have said no. I should have hung up the phone and moved on with my life. But I couldn't. Because if Jake was right, if Joshua wasn't David's child, then that meant everything David had believed about himself and about me was a lie. I'll help you, I said. Tell me what you need. Over the next 2 months, Jake and I became unlikely allies. We met several times in cafes in Leeds and Manchester, comparing notes, gathering information. Jake showed me medical records proving he and Caroline had been trying for a baby. He showed me text messages from their relationship. He showed me photos of his family, including his nephew, who did indeed look remarkably like baby Joshua. I'm not trying to ruin their lives, Jake kept saying. I just need to know the truth. If he's not my son, fine. I'll walk away. But if he is, I have a right to be in his life. The problem was getting a sample for paternity testing. We couldn't just walk up to Caroline and David and ask for the baby's DNA. Then Jennifer gave me an unexpected gift. She came to my flat one evening with a package. Don't ask me how I got this, she said. But it's Joshua's hair from his first haircut. Mum kept a lock of it in an envelope. I stole it when I was visiting. I stared at the envelope. Inside was a tiny lock of dark baby hair. Why are you doing this? I asked Jennifer. Because what they did to you was wrong, she said. And because I'm tired of watching my mother and brother hurt people and get away with it. If this baby isn't David's, he deserves to know. And you deserve to be vindicated. Jake got the DNA test done privately at his hospital in Leeds. He used his own DNA and the baby's hair. Then we waited. The results came back in October. Joshua Brown was not David's son. Probability of paternity: 99.7% that Jake Pemberton was the biological father. I sat in my flat staring at the test results, feeling a mixture of emotions so complex I couldn't untangle them. Relief. Vindication. Rage. Sadness. David had left me, humiliated me, blamed me for 5 years for not getting pregnant. He told everyone I was broken. He'd married another woman and claimed her pregnancy proved I was the problem. And all along he'd been the one who couldn't have children. The baby he was raising, the son he was so proud of, wasn't even his. What do we do now? I asked Jake when I called him with the results. We tell him, Jake said firmly. He deserves to know the truth. And I deserve to know my son. We decided to tell David in person. Jake, Jennifer, and I went to David and Caroline's flat in Chorlton on a Saturday afternoon. We'd called ahead, said Jennifer needed to discuss family matters. David reluctantly agreed. Caroline answered the door, baby Joshua in her arms. She looked confused when she saw Jake. Jake? What are you doing here? David appeared behind her. What's going on? We need to talk, Jake said. All of us. About Joshua. We sat in their living room, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Joshua was in his bassinet, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of the bomb we were about to drop. Jake pulled out the paternity test results and placed them on the coffee table. What is this? David asked, his voice tight. DNA test results, Jake said calmly. Joshua is my son, not yours. The color drained from Caroline's face. That's not possible. It's 99.7% possible, Jake said, pushing the papers toward her. We slept together in late February, right before you moved to Manchester. You got pregnant then, not in March when you started seeing David. You're lying, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. He was staring at the test results, at the undeniable scientific evidence. I'm not lying, Jake said. And I think you know I'm not. Look at him, David. Really look at him. He doesn't look anything like you. David did look. At the baby in the bassinet. At the dark hair and the eyes that were definitely not his. At the nose that looked nothing like his own. Caroline, David said slowly, his voice dangerously quiet. Is this true? Caroline was crying now, mascara running down her face. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. The timing was so close and I thought. You thought. David exploded. You let me marry you. You let me raise a child that isn't mine. You let me divorce my wife and humiliate her in front of everyone because you were pregnant. I really thought he was yours. Caroline sobbed. Jake and I only slept together once after we broke up. I was already seeing you. The doctor said I was about 6 weeks along when I found out, and I thought that meant. The doctor was probably measuring from your last period, not from conception, Jake said quietly. It's a common mistake. David looked like he might be sick. He stood up, ran his hands through his hair, started pacing. This can't be happening. This can't be real. It is real, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was steady cold. And do you know what's really ironic, David? You blamed me for 5 years for not getting pregnant. You called me broken. You told everyone I was defective. You left me for her because she got pregnant, and that proved it was me who was the problem. David looked at me, his face pale. But it was never me, I continued. It was you. You're the one who's infertile. That's why I never got pregnant. That's why you refused to get tested, because deep down you knew. You knew and you couldn't face it, so you made me the villain instead. You don't know that, David said weakly. Just because this one time. Don't, I said firmly. Don't you dare try to rewrite history now. You're infertile, David. That's the truth you were too much of a coward to face. And now everyone knows it. The room was silent except for Caroline's sobbing and Joshua's soft breathing. I want custody, Jake said, looking at Caroline. I want to be in my son's life. We can work out the details with lawyers, but I'm not walking away from him. He's my son, David said desperately. I've been raising him for 3 months. I'm on the birth certificate. You're not his biological father, Jake said. And I'm sorry, but biology matters. He's my child. David looked at me, his eyes pleading. Charlotte, you have to understand. I didn't know. I really thought. You didn't want to know, I said. That's different. You could have gotten tested any time in those 5 years. You refused. Because you were too proud, too cowardly, too invested in your own narrative to face the possibility that you might be the problem. Do you think karma is real, or just coincidence with perfect timing? I stood up, straightened my jacket, looked at him one last time. The man I'd loved for so long. The man who'd destroyed me. Goodbye, David. I hope it was worth it. Jennifer and I left together, leaving Jake to work out the details with Caroline and David. As we walked out of the building, Jennifer turned to me. How do you feel? I thought about it. Free, I said finally. I feel free. The fallout from that confrontation was spectacular. Jake filed for custody and a judge agreed to legally recognize him as Joshua's father. David's name was removed from the birth certificate. Caroline and David's marriage, already fragile, crumbled completely. They separated, then divorced. The whole thing took less than 6 months. David moved back in with his mother in Birmingham, humiliated and broken. The entire California community in Manchester knew the story. The man who'd left his wife because she couldn't give him children turned out to be infertile himself. The child he'd claimed as his son belonged to another man. The karma was poetic. Helen stopped talking to me entirely, but I heard through Jennifer that she was devastated. The grandchild she'd been so proud of wasn't actually her grandchild at all. Caroline moved back to Leeds to be closer to Jake and his family. They're co-parenting Joshua now. I heard they're actually getting along well, trying to make it work for their son's sake. As for me, I got tested one more time. Went to a different doctor, a specialist in London. Wanted to be absolutely sure. The results were the same. I was perfectly fertile. Nothing wrong with me at all. Have you considered trying again? The doctor asked. With someone new? I laughed bitterly. I'm divorced, doctor. Who would I try with? Well, she said carefully, there are options. Sperm donors, IVF if you want to be sure. No, I said firmly. If I have a child, it'll be the natural way. With someone who loves me. Not in a laboratory. I threw myself into work, into rebuilding my life. I moved out of the flat David and I had shared, got a place of my own in Withington. I reconnected with old friends. I started going back to church, though I switched to a different one where nobody knew my story. And I tried to forgive. Not for David's sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger was exhausting. It was killing me slowly. But then, 3 months ago, something unexpected happened. I missed my period. At first, I didn't think much of it. Stress can do that. But when another week passed and still nothing, I bought a test. And that's how we got here. Back to the beginning. To me, sitting in my kitchen staring at a positive pregnancy test. Let me be very clear about something. I haven't been with anyone since David left me. Not a single person. I've been celibate for over a year. So how was I pregnant? I went to the doctor immediately, certain there had to be a mistake. But the blood test confirmed it. I was about 6 weeks pregnant. But that's impossible, I kept saying. I haven't been with anyone. Are you sure? The doctor asked gently. Sometimes in stressful situations people's memories can. I'm sure, I said firmly. I would know if I'd had sex with someone. The doctor looked uncomfortable. Well, then we need to rule out some other possibilities. It's extremely rare, but there have been documented cases of. She trailed off, clearly unsure how to proceed. Cases of what? Charlotte, I know this is going to sound strange, but there have been a few medical cases where pregnancy occurred through unconventional means. Sperm transfer through contaminated surfaces, for instance. It's incredibly rare, almost unheard of, but. I thought back over the past 6 weeks. Where had I been? What had I done? And then I remembered. About 7 weeks ago, I'd gone to a fertility clinic for my final testing in London. The specialist who wanted to rule out every possible issue. They'd done an internal examination. They'd taken samples. Oh God. Could it have happened at a medical facility? I asked. If equipment wasn't properly sterilized or. That would be grounds for a massive lawsuit, the doctor said. But yes, theoretically, if there was contamination of equipment with viable sperm, and it was used in an internal examination shortly after. The room spun. Was I seriously suggesting I'd gotten pregnant through some kind of medical accident? It sounded insane. But it was the only explanation that made sense. I contacted the London clinic and demanded an investigation. They insisted it was impossible, that their sterilization protocols were foolproof. But they agreed to look into it. Meanwhile, I had to figure out what to do. I was pregnant somehow after years of trying. After years of being called broken and barren. After years of desperately wanting a child. And now, without a partner, without any conventional explanation, I was going to have a baby. Was this God's sense of humor? Was this karma? Was this a miracle or a medical mistake? I didn't know. I still don't know. But I'll tell you what I do know. I'm keeping this baby. I told Blessing first. She came over to my flat and I just blurted it out. I'm pregnant. Her jaw dropped. What? How? Who? That's the thing, I said. I don't know how. I haven't been with anyone. But I'm definitely pregnant. 6 weeks along. Blessing stared at me for a long moment. Charlotte, I need you to really think about this. Are you absolutely certain you haven't been with anyone? Not even. I'm certain, I said firmly. I know how this sounds. I know it doesn't make sense. But I'm telling you the truth. Then how? I told her about my suspicions regarding the London clinic. About the possibility of contaminated equipment. About how it was the only logical explanation, however improbable. Blessing was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Do you want to keep it?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I've wanted a baby for 6 years. And now against all odds I'm pregnant. How can I not see this as a blessing? Even if you don't know who the father is?" "I know it's not David's," I said with a bitter laugh. "That's all that matters." Blessing hugged me tightly. "Then I'm here for you. Whatever you need." The London clinic eventually came back with results from their investigation. They found no evidence of protocol violations, but they couldn't definitively rule out the possibility of contamination. They offered me a substantial settlement to avoid a lawsuit and any public scandal that I took the money. I needed it for the baby anyway. I didn't tell David. Why would I? He'd made it clear years ago that he didn't want anything to do with me. Besides, the baby definitely wasn't his. Biologically impossible given his infertility. But I did tell Jennifer. She deserved to know after everything she'd done for me. "So you're saying you got pregnant without actually having sex?" she said incredulously when I told her. "Apparently so." "That's the most biblical thing I've ever heard," she said, and we both laughed until we cried. Jennifer told me that David was doing poorly. Living with Helen in Birmingham, working a different job at a smaller hospital, barely speaking to anyone. The scandal had destroyed him. Everyone in the California community knew about his infertility and the fact that Joshua wasn't his child. His pride, his reputation, his entire identity had been built on a lie, and when the truth came out he'd crumbled. Part of me felt sorry for him. But mostly I felt nothing. He wasn't my problem anymore. I was 3 months along when I finally felt brave enough to go back to church. My new church in Withington where nobody knew my history. I sat in the back row during worship, hand on my barely visible bump, and I cried. Not sad tears this time. Grateful tears. Overwhelmed tears. Against all odds, after all the pain and humiliation and heartbreak, I was going to be a mother. I'm 7 months pregnant now as I write this. The baby is healthy. A girl. I'm going to name her Grace. Because that's what this is, pure grace. But there's one more piece to this story. One more revelation that puts everything into perspective. Last month I got a call from the London fertility clinic. Not about the settlement. About something else. Mrs. Brown, the administrator said nervously, we need to inform you of something. During our investigation into your case, we discovered that there was another patient at the clinic on the same day as your examination. A sperm donor. And due to a documentation error, samples may have been. She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. May have been what? I asked, my heart pounding. May have been used inappropriately. We're still investigating the exact details. But we wanted to inform you that we're attempting to identify the biological father through our donor registry. He has a right to know and you have a right to know who he is. I felt dizzy. So it had happened at the clinic. My suspicions were correct. 2 weeks later they called me back with a name. Marcus Thompson. A 35-year-old architect from Manchester who had been a sperm donor at the clinic for several years. They gave me his contact information and asked if I wanted to reach out to him. Explained that legally, as a sperm donor, he had no parental rights or responsibilities unless we both agreed otherwise. But they felt he deserved to know about the unusual circumstances. I debated for days whether to contact him. On one hand, he was the biological father of my child. On the other hand, he'd been a sperm donor. Surely he'd never expected to be contacted about any potential children? But I also thought about Jake and how desperately he'd wanted to know about Joshua. How he'd fought for the right to be in his son's life. Didn't Marcus deserve the same opportunity? So I called him. Hello. Hi. Is this Marcus Thompson? Yes. Who's this? My name is Charlotte Brown. You don't know me, but I'm calling because, well, this is going to sound insane, but there was a mix-up at the London fertility clinic and I'm pregnant with your baby. Silence. Are you still there? I asked. I'm here. What? I explained everything. The examination. The contamination. The investigation. The fact that I was now 7 months pregnant with his biological daughter. I'm so sorry, I said. I know you never signed up for this. You donated sperm anonymously for a reason. I'm not asking for anything from you. I just thought you deserved to know. There was a long pause. Then Marcus said something I didn't expect. Can we meet? We met at a cafe in the Northern Quarter 3 days later. Marcus Thompson was tall, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He looked nervous, clutching a coffee cup with both hands as I waddled in, very obviously pregnant. Wow, he said when he saw me. You're really pregnant. Very observant, I said with a slight smile, sitting down carefully. I'm sorry. This is surreal. Tell me about it. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about himself. Single, never married, had been a sperm donor because he wanted to help families who couldn't conceive naturally. He'd never expected to meet any of the children conceived with his donations. But this is different, he said. This wasn't planned by anyone. This was an accident. And you didn't choose this either. No, I agreed. But I'm choosing to keep her. I've wanted a baby for so long. Her. I'm having a girl. I'm naming her Grace. Marcus smiled. That's a beautiful name. So what do you want? I asked directly. Do you want to be involved? As I need to know. I need to plan. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I don't know. A week ago I was living my life, working on architectural projects, going to the gym, dating occasionally, and now I'm finding out I'm going to be a father. It's a lot to process. I understand. And I want you to know, I'm not asking for anything. Child support, involvement, nothing. The clinic gave me a settlement. I have a job. I'll be fine on my own. But should you have to be? Marcus asked. I mean, yes, this was an accident. But it happened. And now there's going to be a little girl in the world who's half me. Don't I have some responsibility to her? I felt tears prickling my eyes. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, Marcus said gently. But maybe I want to. Can I think about it? Can we get to know each other first? See if this could work. And that's what we did. Over the next 2 months, Marcus and I met regularly. Coffee dates. Walks in Plattfields Park. Long conversations about life and hopes and fears. He came to my ultrasound appointment. Saw Grace on the screen, heard her heartbeat, and I watched his eyes fill with tears. That's incredible, he whispered. He wasn't David. He was nothing like David. He was kind and thoughtful and genuinely excited about the prospect of being a father, even though none of this had been planned. We became friends. Then slowly, carefully, something more. I'm 9 months pregnant now, due any day. Marcus moved some of his things into my flat last week. We're taking things slowly, figuring out what this relationship is, but he's committed to being a father to Grace. Whether you and I work out romantically or not, he said, I want to be there for her. And for you. Strange how life works out sometimes. I spent 5 years with a man who blamed me for something that was his fault. Who humiliated me, abandoned me, and tried to erase me from his life. And now I'm about to have a baby with a man I barely knew 3 months ago, conceived through the most unusual circumstances imaginable, and I've never felt more blessed. Last week, Jennifer called me with news. You won't believe this, she said. David met someone new. Good for him, I said neutrally. Charlotte, she's a widow. With 3 children from her previous marriage. He's basically become an instant stepfather. I laughed. Actually laughed. So let me get this straight. The man who left me because I couldn't give him children is now raising someone else's children. Yep. And get this, his new girlfriend doesn't want any more children. She's had her tubes tied. So David is never going to have biological children of his own. The irony was almost too perfect. How does he seem? I asked, genuinely curious. Honestly, subdued. Humbled. He's not the same arrogant man he used to be. The whole scandal with Caroline and Joshua broke something in him. He's working at a small medical center in Birmingham, living quietly. Mum is furious that his new girlfriend won't give her grandchildren, but David doesn't seem to care anymore. Maybe he finally learned his lesson, I said. Maybe. But it cost him everything to learn it. I hung up the phone and felt something I didn't expect. Pity. Not the angry, bitter kind. Just genuine sadness for a man who destroyed his own life through pride and cowardice. But I couldn't dwell on David anymore. I had my own life to live. My own daughter to prepare for. Grace Thompson was born on a rainy Tuesday morning in October at St. Mary's Hospital in Manchester. 7 pounds 4 ounces. Dark curly hair and eyes that looked just like her father's. Marcus was with me through the entire labor, holding my hand, encouraging me, crying when she finally emerged. She's perfect, he whispered, staring at our daughter in awe. She's absolutely perfect. Blessing was there too, taking photos and crying happy tears. Look at her. Look at what God did. And Jennifer came to visit later that day, bringing flowers and gifts. She's beautiful, Charlotte. Absolutely beautiful. As I held Grace in my arms, feeling her tiny weight against my chest, smelling that newborn smell, listening to her soft breathing, I thought about everything I'd been through to get to this moment. Pain. The humiliation. The years of being told I was broken. The betrayal. The divorce. The scandal. And then this miracle. This impossible, unexpected, beautiful miracle. Was it worth it? Marcus asked quietly, as if reading my mind. Everything you went through? I looked down at Grace, at her perfect tiny features, at the way her hand curled around my finger. Yes, I said. Every single second of pain was worth it to get to her. Grace is 6 weeks old now. I'm writing this during her nap time, one-handed because she refuses to sleep anywhere except on my chest. Marcus and I are officially together. He proposed last week. Nothing fancy, just a quiet moment in our living room with Grace sleeping between us. I know this all happened backwards, he said. We had the baby before we even really knew each other. But I love you, Charlotte. And I love Grace. And I want us to be a family. Properly. Will you marry me? I said yes. Because sometimes life doesn't happen in the order you expect. Sometimes the best things come from the most chaotic circumstances. We're getting married next spring at a small ceremony. Just close friends and family. Nothing like my first wedding with all its false promises and hidden lies. But there's one more thing I need to tell you. One more piece to complete this story. Yesterday I got a message on Facebook. From David. I almost didn't open it. Why should I? What could he possibly have to say to me that I'd want to hear? But curiosity won. The message was long. Rambling. Clearly written over time, edited and re-edited. Charlotte, it began. I don't expect you to respond to this. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. But I need to say this because I've been carrying it for too long. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything I put you through. For blaming you. For making you feel broken when you were never broken. For refusing to get tested because I was too proud and too afraid to face the possibility that I was the problem. You were right about everything. I am infertile. I finally got tested after everything happened with Caroline and Joshua. The doctor confirmed it. Low sperm count, motility issues, genetic factors. I've probably been infertile since my early 20s. Which means every day for 5 years I blamed you for something that was my fault. I let you suffer. I let you cry. I let you pray and fast and beg God for something I knew deep down I couldn't give you. And instead of being honest, I made you the villain. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I couldn't face my own inadequacy. I heard through Jennifer that you have a daughter now. Grace. I saw the photo she posted. She's beautiful. And I'm happy for you. Truly. You deserve to be a mother. You would have been an amazing mother to my children, if I'd been man enough to admit the truth and seek help. I'm with someone new now. Maria. She's a good woman. She has 3 children from her previous marriage and they're good kids. I'm learning to be a stepfather, which is harder than I expected but also more rewarding than I imagined. But I'll never have biological children of my own. And I've had to make peace with that. It's my cross to bear. The consequence of my pride. I just wanted you to know that I know. I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you in ways I can never repair. And I'm sorry. I hope you're happy. I hope your daughter brings you all the joy you deserve. And I hope someday, maybe years from now, you can forgive me. Not for my sake, but for yours. David. I read the message 3 times. Then I looked down at Grace, sleeping peacefully on my chest. Did I forgive him? I don't know. Forgiveness is complicated. It's not a single moment or decision. It's a process. A journey. But I'll tell you what I did feel. Free. Finally, completely free. David's apology didn't change the past. It didn't erase the pain. But it closed a chapter. It allowed me to move forward without wondering if he'd ever understand what he'd done. I didn't respond to the message. There was nothing to say. The story between David and me was over. My story, my real story, was just beginning. So let me ask you, now that you know everything. Was I the fool for staying so long? Or was I faithful? Was David evil? Or was he just a broken man too proud to admit his brokenness? Was this story about betrayal? Or was it about redemption? I've asked myself these questions 1,000 times. And I still don't have clear answers. But here's what I do know. Pain has purpose. The 5 years I spent with David, as horrible as they were, taught me strength I didn't know I had. They taught me my worth doesn't come from my ability to have children or please a man. They taught me to stand up for myself. Karma is real. David didn't get away with what he did. He lost everything. His marriage, his reputation, his chance at biological children. The universe has a way of balancing the scales. Miracles happen. Not always in the way we expect. Not always in the time frame we want. But they happen. Grace is proof of that. And sometimes the greatest blessings come from the most impossible circumstances. I spent 5 years thinking I was broken. 5 years being told I was the problem. 5 years carrying guilt that wasn't mine. And then, when I least expected it, through circumstances that seem medically impossible, I got exactly what I'd been praying for. A daughter. A family. A second chance at love with a good man. Would I do it all again? In a heartbeat. Because grace is worth everything. If you're watching this and you're in a situation like I was, being blamed for something, being told you're broken, being made to feel less than, please know this. You are not the problem. You are not broken. You deserve better. And sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away. Let karma handle the rest. Focus on healing yourself, rebuilding your life, and trusting that something better is coming. Took me losing everything to gain everything. It took me being broken down to be built back up stronger. Took me walking through fire to find my miracle. If I can survive what I survived, so can you. This is Charlie's story told from her perspective. There are other perspectives, other versions, other truths. David would tell a different story. Caroline would tell a different story. Even Marcus and Jake would have their own versions. But this is mine. My truth. My journey from victim to victor. And I'm sharing it because I know I'm not alone. Somewhere out there, there's a woman who's being blamed for something that's not her fault. A woman who's being told she's broken when she's actually whole. A woman who's carrying guilt that doesn't belong to her. Hold on. Your miracle is coming. In ways you can't even imagine. And when it arrives, all the pain you endured will suddenly make sense. Trust the process. Trust the timing. Trust that the universe knows what it's doing. And most importantly, trust yourself. You know your worth. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. What lesson do you think this story teaches about trust, love, and patience? Before you close this story and move on with your day, I want you to sit with these questions. Really think about them. Because this isn't just my story. Elements of it might be your story too. Have you ever made excuses for someone who was hurting you? Why did you do it? What lesson do you think this story teaches about trust, love, and patience? Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories of love, betrayal, and healing. Speech balloon, share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might inspire our next episode. Red heart, because sometimes the truth hurts, but it also sets you free.